Why write historical fiction?
That's a $6 million question, actually. Why write historical fiction? It's hard. It's very hard. So I think it goes back to my roots as a scientist, my profession as a researcher and a scientist. For me, like digging deep into a problem and understanding why it turns out a certain way or why certain things happen is just innate to my DNA, to my matrix, to my texture as a person. So I have that same passion about history. Since I was a young girl, I've been in love with so I'm a Gen Xer, right? And all of us Gen Xers grew up with the big television show. Before there was a lot of cable and there was Netflix and all these things, there was the mini series, right? That showed up on cable TV. And we would watch North and South and The Bastard, The Rebel. There was Lonesome Dove, and there was the Thornbirds. And we lived for those, right? In the history, they were always steeped in really amazing history. So from a young age, I really kind of fell in love with period pieces, right? And fell in love with history. But what I will say about the American Revolutionary War, that really comes from my father. He took me to Colonial Williamsburg as a young girl, and I fell in love with the clothing first. The waistcoats, which I always call my hashtag waistcoat porn, right? But the waistcoats and the long jackets and the tunics and the men with the long hair and the very beautiful dropped waistlines of the dresses that the women wore and their hair and the powdering. I really fell in love with that look. And so for me, the only way I could ever see myself writing was in this beautiful backdrop. Now, when it actually comes to writing historical fiction, it's very challenging, right? You have to learn the topic from the history all the way down to the very granular, like what are they eating? What are they wearing? How do they get dressed? How do they go to the bathroom? How do they do their daily life? How do they light their candles, right? And that goes to my being a scientist. I love that very granular, deep level of understanding of a topic. So historical fiction made sense to me as a scientist and as an individual. And it was always my favorite type of books, too. But what I will say is that I really love history in a way that I covet it. I think it's just something, it has so many gifts to give us and so much to learn from it. So whenever I'm writing my stories, whenever I get stuck within a story, I can always go to the history and get out of it. Like a lot of writers, I imagine, would find history very stifling. For me, I find it like this lovely box that I have to work within. And I can always bump around the walls and find an answer to whatever problem it is if I open up a history book. Whenever I get lost in a story, there is always something amazing in history, something going on that can help me out of a problem. And it happened to me many times in the first three books in the saga, and it certainly happened to me in Man of War. So I would say that historic fiction was just the only way for me as an author. It isn't for everybody, obviously. It's a challenging way to go, but it made sense for me. So that is why I got into historic fiction.